Honest J. Nowak. Oh yeah.
A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J. Nowak and Flying with the Foam. So now, I'd very much like to get into quite a bit more detail on how the rest of this whole thing's gonna go. Because right now, I pretty much have this all covered here because, well, the black notepad here basically suggests that I have less than an entire page worth of topics. So if you pretty much did the math here, then that's basically another 22 blasters that I have left to pick out here. And I pretty much have already. So I'm covered for the rest of this part of the series as it is. And the remainder of Season 1 is going to be kind of like child's play, pretty much. But I'm just going to go on a limb to say that this is number 656 in the season and in the series. And, well, that comes with more blasters to review here. And for 656, I've got the Elite Rukkus, basically. Now, if you're very familiar with some other blasters out there that happen to have an integrated magazine into it, like ones that I've talked about previously, including the Nail Biter and also a previously mentioned blaster out there from way back then called the Mag Strike, then well, the Rukkus here is basically another blaster that has been released by Hasbro to attempt to cash in on this little subject that they have in mind. This topic of having an integrated clip or magazine, so this way it can move up or down pretty much speaks for itself. But the thing is that alongside the Rukkus, there were a few other blasters that came at the same time in 2018. There was the Mega AccuStrike Thunderhawk, which that alone had more of a sideways sort of thing going on there. And then of course there was the Modulus Battle Scout, which eventually got made into a battle camo blaster called the Combiner. And then of course there also came some other blasters here and there to cash in on this topic of having an integrated clip that can move up and down pretty much for ease of accessibility or the usage of how many darts can basically fit into it. Of course, it's a permanent add-on, pretty much, but not to let that distract from the blaster itself based on its performance. Unlike the majority of these kind of blasters here that happen to have this sort of magazine as a permanent integration, this one here does set quite a few standards in motion because first of all, I really gotta be honest. This one does kind of set the pace for... Okay, yeah. Alright, there we go. Now, as I was just saying, this one actually does set the pace for how some blasters, especially the ones that have this put into it, they don't really do that well in terms of performance. I've mentioned before how the Nail Biter doesn't seem to work good at all with invisible integration, and later on here in Flying with the Foam on HJN I've reviewed it again. I've done a little bit of rechecking and quite a bit of, well, picking around with it, and I practically came to the conclusion that it is in fact a terrible blaster for what it is, and that Hasbro pretty much marketed it to be a bigger blaster with the usage of an accessory set. I mean, that alone was kind of a buzzkill and a way to pretty much contradict how the blaster would have pretty much worked out overall. I mean, this was a good attempt at first, but these days we want to have high quality blasters that do very good in terms of their performance, but also that are not as heavily marketed in case they might end up flopping, because that is just pretty much Nerf spilling money down the gutter pretty much. By funding some new profitable opportunities by trying to get the nail biter a new accessory kit or other related sets that might work well with the nail biter as a whole. It only just leads to a lot of disasters along the way. Whenever you try to branch out something that big, well, it doesn't really do so well. But the Rukkus here actually does try to avoid a lot of this stuff as possible, because first of all, if you look on the entirety of the blaster itself, top, bottom, left, right, front, and back, there are 0 tactical rails on this thing. That's right, take a long look at this. This almost makes it feel like non-Nerf blasters that pretty much come alongside it. Which makes sense because there have been a lot of competitors that have attempted to take on Hasbro in many ways. Some have actually been successful in recent years. And I don't blame a lot of people out there for wanting to go spend money on something that's not Nerf, but to be fair, a lot of these competitors are really picking up the pieces that Nerf has been leaving behind. Especially when it comes to how people are still continuing to put out lies and slander on the Ultra lineup itself. And speaking of the Ultra line, that certainly has been quite a big topic this year as well, 2021. And it only just lets us know that we are going to be getting a lot more bigger blasters out there. Hasbro's really been putting in millions of dollars in their investments. But after pretty much putting out a few darts on this blaster, the Rukkus, probably one of the latest that you might ever get to know about the Elite lineup as a whole, before many other lineups started to take on the immense success of it after this one started to decline fairly quickly. This one's sort of like mediocre in a way. Its performance is almost unpredictable. It's a pretty spontaneous level of how darts can actually fit into the magazine, because it's kind of a loose fit in most ways. If you look down into the barrel, look, this dart especially, this one right here, notice how it's got a much bigger shadow in comparison to the rest, and that's only because of how the loose fit of these barrels pretty much allow for darts to not necessarily get as much pressure built up behind them in the air restrictor, but that's pretty much just my immense calculation on the whole thing. And we got one more. And one that kind of misfired. There we go. That one was kind of a hard one too. I suppose that the bottom barrel happens to do the best out of all 8 of them in this magazine. Now, going back to the magazine itself, it's pretty much just your typical banana clip that you might actually get on various other blasters, especially the clip system ones. But the way that they managed to integrate into here actually seems promising. It kind of bears resemblance to that of a typical real SMG, like the MP5K or AK-74U or something else of that sort. Probably without any other attachments on it, like sights, stocks, and other little clunky pieces that you might add on to a real firearm here and there. But the Rukkus ICS-8 certainly is something that I probably won't ultimately recommend unless you're as big of a collector out there as I am, or you're just willing to waste a lot of money in your life. That's probably the only way I can explain this to the best of my ability. Otherwise, for an Elite blaster, I can't really say that the Rukkus overall is probably worth all of its merits, and its functionality overall just seems a bit mediocre. But with the usage of an integrated clip as a permanent attachment pretty much, it kind of just feeds off the back ends of most other blasters that came from the same exact producer and the same exact industry that have also had some similar problems as this. So that only leads me to believe in a way that these kind of blasters may not ultimately be worth the price or worth the hassle pretty much. If you can in fact find blasters like those in any place out there in the world, whatever the marketplace you're in, then I can't really be sure if it's worth congratulating. So, Rukkus, again, does get sort of like a medium slash high level rating by me, but that's only because I'm a bit more forgiving of most things out there, and I seem to be a little too generous. But it's not to worry anymore, because I will soon have a lot of new material that might actually be worse than this. So that's just my hypothetical statement there, but if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.